Hello all. So last year in 2023, my family and I sold our home and a significant amount of our belongings, and we moved to Eastern Tennessee. This is our story, and hopefully it will be helpful to you if you're considering a similar move. Whenever possible, I've tried to use video and images of what we're actually talking about, so you're not just stuck watching a talking head the whole time. And I've also tried to include the good and the bad, as well as the completely unexpected things that we've experienced since moving to Tennessee. I've broken this video down into chapters, so if you wish, you can just skip ahead to the parts you find most useful to you. So just a little bit about our background. My wife and I were born and raised, we were married and had 4 daughters in California, save for a couple years that my wife spent out of state going to college. We had lived in California our whole lives. We both had built successful small businesses there. We were close to everything from Yosemite National Park to the beach to Southern California. We were living in what we thought would be our forever home, and we had a great circle of friends and almost all of our family nearby. We were plugged into the community and really active, but for so many reasons, we felt like staying in California had just become less and less of a long-term option for our family. And I felt like a dad, my kids weren't going to have the same opportunities for success that I had growing up. So in 2017 or so, we began talking about moving.
Well, we started doing a lot of research, and we made a list of pros and cons of reasons why we should or shouldn't come. And we even traveled across the country several times just to kind of check out little areas that were kind of on our short list. And we had 2 kids in college, 2 kids in elementary school, and we just hadn't felt like it was that bad yet, and enough of a reason to move, because we'd be moving away from our friends and family and the financial security that we had built in our 2 businesses. And then the pandemic happened in 2020, and my salon was shut down for 5 months. I wasn't able to work, and unless I did it out of the home, and I was doing that illegally. And my kids were kicked out of school. Everybody had to come home and Zoom at home. And that was when it was time to go.
I really want to be careful here. We have really close friends who hold very different political views from our own. People who we really do love and respect, people who we still talk to on a regular basis. I think when people hear that we left California for Tennessee, they assume it was just a red state, blue state kind of thing, part of the great sort that's happening in our country. And it really wasn't just that. It came down to the fact that California was just increasingly a difficult and expensive place to raise a family and run a business. And I kind of thought at my age and at this point in my life, I just really wanted to build something to leave for my kids, and we didn't see any hope of that getting any better. And I don't think we realized just how bad it was until we had been out for a while. It's a mess.
Yeah, no, California is a bit crazy. I mean, I do miss being a few hours away from the beach and the mountains, but yeah, I'm glad we left.
In college, I majored in business with an emphasis on entrepreneurship. And it really seemed like all my professors were telling me to get out while I still could.
It seemed like half the conversations I had with people revolved around everybody's desire to get out of California.
It was tough, and we left almost everything and everyone we knew behind. But I knew ultimately that it was the best decision for our family. And I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, and I wanted to homeschool the 2 remaining children that were in school. And that just wasn't going to be possible in California. We needed 2 incomes, and it just wasn't feasible. So I guess that was one good thing about California shutting down the schools and my job, because I learned I could homeschool my kids. So I don't think I would have tried to had it not been for that.
I had traveled to Knoxville on business in 2016 and really kind of fell in love with the place, particularly the Smoky Mountains. So we all came out a couple times after that to explore the area, and we ultimately decided that we were going to take a leap of faith.
Yeah, so the move was eventful. We sold or donated a ton of stuff, including 2 cars, and we still needed 2 moving trucks. So that was interesting. And then we almost got to Knoxville, about 60 miles out. The the biggest truck broke down. So my husband sat on the side of the road and we just sort of limped in. And
I thought with the 6 of us and the amount of planning I had done prior to the move that I would go the U-Haul route and save a little money and have a great family adventure. I'm not sure how much money I actually saved. Honestly, in the end, I think it was probably a wash. But we did have a great family adventure.
yeah, we're not doing that again.
I don't know, I actually liked driving across the country. It was fun.
It was a long drive, and I learned that New Mexico has a serious pothole problem.
It was definitely a fun experience because we got to go travel around and see all these new places.
So we finally got settled into our home. And probably the first thing we really noticed was just how profoundly different the quality of life was here. We had done our research, and like I said, we had visited the area several times before, but the difference was just so stark. Sadly, we had become accustomed to the homelessness crisis in California. And I know that homelessness is really a symptom of drug addiction and mental illness, but it's just out of control in California. And the homeless population really seemed to be becoming increasingly aggressive, even belligerent. And you just don't see that here. Even downtown at night, you rarely see homelessness. And when you do, there just seems to be a general sense of civility here that was completely absent in California. You also don't have massive homeless encampments everywhere.
There's almost no graffiti. Every once in a while you'll see some tag, but it's rare, and it usually gets cleaned up right away.
There's also not heaps of trash everywhere. The freeways are pretty clean, and it's rare to find litter on the ground in cities.
I feel safe here in a way that I didn't before. I don't worry about my kids nearly as much. I mean, you still have to use common sense when you're out and about, but it just doesn't feel as threatening as California did. I feel like we could leave our doors unlocked, and I feel like I can walk out my door and not have to worry. And we actually lived in a really nice neighborhood, and you still had security doors and cameras, and but here you just have basically Ring doorbells, and that's about it. It's not uncommon to see children leave bicycles out in the yard and all their toys, and they're still there the next morning, which is shocking. And I know that there's crime here. It's just not as rampant as it was when we were in California. So I wonder sometimes if it's because everybody's packing here.
Okay, so this could be a really good thing or a really bad thing depending on your personal perspective. Please understand that I want this video to be informative and not political. But you should know that Tennessee is a constitutional carry state, meaning if you're 21 years or older and legally able to purchase and own a firearm, you can carry it concealed without a license here. And a lot of people in Tennessee own and carry firearms. I mean, there are some restrictions, like you can't carry in a school or a government building, but all in all, gun laws are really lenient here compared to California. In fact, the very first night we got to Tennessee, I went to the grocery store to get some bread, milk, eggs, just some basics for the next day. And while I was putting my items on the belt, there was an elderly woman in front of me that was digging through her purse for a coupon, and she actually removed her revolver from her purse, set it on the check writing counter, then got the coupon and handed it to the cashier, and then took her revolver and put it back in the purse. I was flabbergasted. I thought for sure SWAT was on the way, but nobody said a word, and she went on her way. So yeah, Tennessee is a different place. There's also no waiting period here. You can buy a firearm and walk out of the store with it as soon as the background check comes back. It takes about 15 minutes. And there isn't an approved list like in California, so pretty much if a manufacturer makes it, you can buy it.
Well, another thing we noticed right away was that people actually talk to you here. People make eye contact and say hello, and they're not just, walking around with their head in their phone or trying to ignore you by looking straight ahead when you're walking. So that was interesting. When we first got here, complete strangers offered to help us unload our U-Haul, and we got to know our neighbors really quick.
Things do move at a slower pace here. Stores and restaurants aren't open as late. People work hard here, but not everybody's working like 12-hour days. Another thing is people take a fall break here in addition to the spring break, usually around the second week or so of October. Schools shut down for a week and families go on vacation. Some businesses will also close, just like spring break, which is really cool because in October, Eastern Tennessee is pretty incredible.
Okay, I know it's kind of a little thing, but people actually put their shopping carts back in the shopping cart return. And if you're not from here. They do call them buggies, not shopping carts. But it's pretty uncommon to find a cart just abandoned on the nearest curb or parking lot island, so that was kind of nice. I mean, not everybody is, in a good mood. There are rude people, but it's just nothing like it was in California. To me, California was more of a me first kind of mentality, even where I noticed we were even starting to kind of buy into that and be part of that, and I didn't like it, and that just isn't the way it is here.
Generally speaking, people are a lot more welcoming here, especially once they find out you're not here to Californianize their Tennessee. I think the best advice I could give somebody worried about the culture shock coming from California to Tennessee, or really kind of anywhere in the Southeast, is just to embrace the culture and not to try to change it. And I don't just mean politically. Work to acclimate and become a Tennessean, not just a Californian who just happens to live in Tennessee.
I didn't realize how different the culture here would be until I had been here for a few months. I thought with the University of Tennessee being here that there would be an active, lively nightlife. But what I actually came to find out was that most places here close at 8 p.m., including a lot of restaurants. People here actually take vacation, and they don't use that vacation day to prepare for the next work day like I'm used to.
And pretty much, except for the freeways, the speed limit is going to be lower here, and people do drive a lot slower.
And things are going to be much, much slower in the checkout line. And it doesn't matter where you went to school, you're a Vols fan now.
If orange isn't your color, it is now.
But there's a reason we left California, and there's a reason we chose Tennessee. And I think it's important to accept Tennessee on its own terms and not expect it to be just California East.
Yeah, surprisingly, it seems like almost everyone goes to church on Sundays here. And there's pretty much a church on every corner. We were always hesitant in California to get our kids involved in community activities and school stuff because it seems like everything was done on a Saturday and a Sunday. And here, Sunday mornings are for church. A lot of places are closed down, but you won't see the ball fields full until afternoon or later in the day. I guess that could be a good thing or a bad thing depending on your personal views, but church is a big part of our life, and it's a big part of the culture here in this community.
Whoa!
Okay, weather is a big topic in Tennessee, probably because it's constantly changing. Locals have a saying, if you don't like the weather, give it an hour. And it's true. I mean, not only does Tennessee have 4 distinct seasons, you might experience all 4 of them in a single day. But honestly, I don't personally see that as a bad thing. I think people who move here kind of either love the weather or they really hate it. And I realize it comes down to your personal perspective. If you're moving here from the Bay Area or along the coastline, then summers here are going to feel brutal, especially with the high humidity. But if you're coming from, let's say, the Inland Empire or the Central Valley like we did, then summers here are comparatively mild, even if just a little bit humid at times.
Whenever I tell people that I'm originally from California, they assume that we lived on the beach, but most people don't realize that California is a desert, or at least most of it is. I grew up in the Central Valley, which meant hot, dusty summers.
I love it. I love the thunderstorms in spring and summer. Sometimes the thunderclaps will shake the whole house and we'll all run out to the porch and watch it. I don't know, it's fun. It's exciting for us because it's not something we're used to. I love the fact that fall is cool here. And where we were from in California, fall, a lot of times in October, you'd still have 100-degree weather. Here, the leaves start changing in September. It's sweater weather. The mornings and evenings are crisp and cool. And it's beautiful. It rains a lot.
Yeah, it rains here a lot, and it's pretty much year-round. The Smoky Mountains can get 80-plus inches of rain a year. Just for comparison, I think Seattle gets something like 40 inches a year. So again, just based on your personal perspective, that can be a good thing or a bad thing. But either way, plan on keeping an umbrella in the car.
But even when it rains, the storm passes through and you're good to go. You can still get out and do whatever you need to do. There'll be blue skies later. And actually, even winter has its charm. We were noticing that we were thinking that, the fall leaves were going to be like the best part of the seasons, but actually the winter has a real charm to it. We thought it would just be all sticks, because all the leaves are gone from the trees. But it actually has its own little charm, and especially when the snow comes and just leaves a little dusting on all the limbs of the trees. It's really pretty.
It was definitely a lot of fun having the snow in Tennessee just because we weren't used to it in California. Like, there's no snow in California. We had to go drive up to it. And it was just like a winter wonderland here in Tennessee, being able to see the snowfall and have snowball fights and make snow angels and just be able to make snowmen and being able to hang out as a family.
The only bad thing about the snow is that if it snows more than 2 inches, this place just shuts down. Schools, stores, it's like a ghost town.
They don't plow the roads here, so if the snowfall sticks, you'd better have a four-wheel drive or chains. And the mail service stops here if there's any snow or ice on the road. We had a significant snowstorm last year, and we weren't able to get our mail for over a week. Also, although Amazon has built a distribution facility in Knoxville, they're not delivering directly yet. So almost all of Amazon's package delivery is being handled by the U.S. Post Office, and they're not really set up to handle the volume. So 2-day delivery can sometimes take 4 or 5 days. And I'm not just bagging on the post office, I just think they're understaffed. We often see our carrier delivering mail and packages late into the night. It's just something to be aware of.
You also get a sense of just how big Knoxville is when you can see the city lights through the trees, because the majority of the year, the thick forest kind of makes everything feel more spread out than it actually is.
With the weather changes, especially when you transition to summer, you have to be wary of the wildlife here. In the summer and spring, more animals like skunks and possums, they're out and about, and unfortunately a lot of them do end up as roadkill. Summer also brings the cicadas out, so just be prepared for their loud buzzing sound.
Another thing I think it's important to talk about is allergies. I suffered from pretty severe seasonal allergies in California, and I was actually really concerned about moving here because everybody always talks about how bad they are here. I was actually so worried about it that we flew out a couple times for a couple weeks in each of the 4 seasons the year before we moved, so I could see firsthand what to expect, how my body would respond. But this is only my personal experience, I've actually had significantly less problems here. I mean, I still take an allergy medication pill daily, and I still have some symptoms, but nowhere near what they were before. So if you're an allergy sufferer, I would highly recommend spending some time out here before you move to see how you're going to react.
I think the question we get asked the most from friends and family from back home is what's the cost of living Tennessee versus California? And I think the most obvious thing you notice right away is the cost of gas. It's like half of what it is in California.
I'll sometimes take pictures of gas pumps and send it to my family, particularly my brother. Another thing that we've found significantly cheaper is the cost of utilities. Our electric bill here averages probably $150 a month, where we were paying north of $800 a month during the summer in California, and we had 36 solar panels on our roof. That's another thing that's really different about Tennessee. You almost never see solar panels here because electricity is so inexpensive here compared to California. Our gas and water bills are way lower too. Trash pickup is actually about the same. And until recently, you could get a whole lot more house for your money. But again, that depends really on what part of California you're coming from. Knoxville's not nearly as expensive as, let's say, like Nashville is, but a 4-bedroom, 3-bath house here is going to set you back in the mid 400s. It could be a lot more or maybe a little bit less depending on where you decide to buy.
Housing affordability is a problem almost everywhere, but it's pretty pronounced here in Knoxville. Wages haven't kept up with housing prices, and unfortunately a lot of people who have grown up here have been priced out of the market, especially with a lot of cash buyers coming in from out of state.
Food is also just as expensive and sometimes even more expensive than it was in California, especially produce, or if you want to buy organic or non-GMO. But I think the thing I miss the most are the options of different produce. But sometimes by the time it gets here, it's not that good. It's already, a few days old, and you better eat it right away. And then another thing that we noticed was bread. We were used to that, California Bay Area sourdough bread, and they just don't have anything like that here. But I guess on the plus side is it made me learn how to make sourdough, and so now we have fresh bread. baked in the house.
There also doesn't seem to be a lot of local family restaurants. There are a few that we have found to be pretty good, but the majority of restaurants here are chain restaurants.
So in California and just the West in general, there is a big foodie culture there. Over here, not so much. However, I have seen it kind of migrate slowly over here to the south. There is a bit more variety of different restaurants and food trucks that have popped up here in Knoxville that are also really good.
I've heard a lot of different stories from people when it comes to car insurance, but we found ours to be about 20% cheaper here compared to California. And our health insurance is also a little less expensive, but not significantly so. Property taxes are also way less in Knoxville. But kind of surprisingly, there is a nearly 10% sales tax here, which is about the same as where we came from in California. But Tennessee does not have an income tax, so you have to factor that in as well. Another huge cost of living advantage is the cost of vehicle registration. We were paying somewhere like $300 to $600 a year in California for tags. Here it varies a little bit from county to county, but we're paying something like $50 and change per vehicle. So overall, yeah, Tennessee is a much less expensive place to live than California. That said, though, a significant part of that might be offset by the fact that wages are generally lower here. You're really going to want to do your homework and factor that in when making your decision to move here. Now, of course, if you happen to be lucky enough to be able to keep your job in California and work remotely, then your dollar is definitely going to go a lot further here.
I think inflation plays into it as well. Everything is just a lot more expensive now, and I mean, in Tennessee or out of Tennessee.
So things that surprised us about living in Tennessee. Honestly, one of the biggest things I found was how much more efficient government was here. For one thing, Tennessee doesn't have a DMV. You get your license from the Tennessee Department of Safety and Homeland Security. I think I said that right. And your plates from your local county office. When we went to get our driver's license changed over from California to Tennessee, we showed up without an appointment and we waited for less than 20 minutes. And when we got up to the window, the people were really helpful and apologized to us for the length of time we had to wait. 20 minutes. If you're not from California, you don't realize how funny that is. We were just speechless. And really, any time I've had to interact with state or local government entities here, the experience has been shockingly simple and streamlined. And the fees are always a fraction of what we're used to paying. And maybe I've just been lucky to this point. Or maybe it's just that California is run so poorly versus Tennessee being ran so well. But yeah, the difference is stark.
We have a tiny bakery that me and my youngest run, and it's just simple decorated sugar cookies. But in California, the cost of that was several $1,000s in permits, licensing, home inspection, insurance premiums were terrible. But in Tennessee, we basically need a food handler's card, and you need to follow some basic common sense packaging and labeling requirements, and then you're good to go. We can even sell to stores. We can ship, and we can do farmers markets. Now, if we have temperature sensitive items or scale the business up, we need a commercial kitchen, but that's understandable.
The road system here in Knoxville took a little bit of time to get used to. Back in California, everything was on the grid system, and infrastructure and zoning laws did everything it could to support the grid. Here, the roads just follow the natural curves of the land, and that took some time to get used to.
And the same road will have all kinds of different names, and it will head in different directions depending on where you're at. So I don't know where I would be if I didn't have GPS. Thank you for GPS.
And most of the roads don't have a shoulder to pull off into, so if you pull off the side of the road, you're going to go into a ditch. And also the roads are just much more narrow than what I was used to.
Oh yeah, people talk a lot about the traffic here and how bad it is. But again, it's a relative term. I know for the native Knoxvillians, traffic is unbearable and probably worse now than it's ever been. But if you're coming from most parts of California, it's honestly not bad at all. I mean, there's rush hour traffic, but at least it still moves at a slower pace, but it does still move.
I really love the community and the Tennessee pride. Everyone's proud to be in Tennessee, and they love their football teams and even just like little things as well. And the farmers markets are huge, and it's just fun to see the whole community come together.
Everybody's proud to live here. Nobody ever says, "I'm from Knoxville," in disgust.
Oh, another thing we noticed right away, and it's kind of funny, but we noticed that people are much quieter here. And I don't know, they just generally speak in hushed tones. But when we go to Costco or even the grocery store, it's quiet. There's not like a lot of, there's not people yelling. There's not a lot of noise. I don't know. I just know that it is much quieter here.
I like Tennessee in autumn or in the fall because I like it when the trees change colors and fall with trees. And we also really like Dollywood, having a theme park so close to home and just being able to explore and get cinnamon bread and all sorts of stuff.
What about Buc-ee's?
We love Buc-ee's. It's one of the best places on earth.
My grandfather, who passed away when I was young, was actually born less than an hour away from where we live now. And in the 1940s, he moved his family, including my father, who was just a child at the time, to California in search of a better life. And he was able to find it there. And now, roughly 80 years later, I've brought my family back to where he began in search of the same thing. A fact I'm sure he'd find ironic. So I just want to say in conclusion that my family and I wrestled with this decision to move for several years. And despite our best efforts to plan and prepare, the transition hasn't been easy. But I know that if we had to do it again, all over again, we would. It was the right decision. So I hope you found this video helpful, and if you're considering a similar move or if you have any questions for us, please feel free to comment in the description. We'll do our best to respond, or send us an email. Link is also in the description. And thanks again for watching, and we do wish you all the very best.
I'm not used to this. Where I'm from, nobody says I'm from with pride. You told me to take that part out.